Everyone, welcome to Grand Final Varsity ALSA Ecom 2025. Before we proceed, I would like to do a quick roll call. For proposition UB, are you hearing complete?
Here and complete.
Okay, cool. Opposition Unair, are you hearing complete?
Very complete.
Okay. A quick roll call also for the adjudicators. Kyle Garrett here.
Yep.
Dennis here.
Here.
Kaalia here.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, Kafinda here.
Here.
Ka Francisca here.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, Ka Gracelyn here.
Here.
Okay, Kali is here.
Here.
Kakatami here.
Here.
And lastly, Kafina here.
Here.
Okay, cool. We're going to proceed, or will start, and we would like to reconfirm that this round is going to be live stream on YouTube ALSA LCUE. Please make sure your speech is appropriate enough for the live stream. We're going to proceed really soon, or will share the time keep and also start the live stream first.
Yeah. Adding on that, yeah, everyone, especially speakers. This is gonna be live stream and this is gonna be recorded also. Sejujurnya, me personally, I learned a lot of debate during my high school years tuh sama video finalsnya ALSI. Lots of video finals tuh dipakai sama coaches everywhere untuk dijadiin material nih untuk nanti your speech tuh akan ditranscribe, di dissect, dibacalah structure-nya gitu. So it's very important for you to make sure that since you've already consent gitu ya, to make sure that this is a speech that you consent to be recorded and you're gonna be proud of. And that means that please remain equitable. Please don't speak of sensitive materials that might make you become unsafe. And please ensure that the speeches tuh reflect gitu what we deem as a morally acceptable speech lah yang tidak harming minorities or people of vulnerable statuses. Thank you so much. Back to you, Orkom, kalau misalkan udah bisa di-record.
Okay, in the meantime, please send your speaking orders for opposition and propositions.
Recording in progress.
Okay, everything is settled. We're going to proceed the round. Is everyone okay? Please give me thumbs up. Okay, cool. To open Grand Final Varsity ALSA Ecom 2025, I welcome Prime Minister here.
Hello, Prime Minister here, Firza. Is there any like disrupting noises? Because yeah, I live near a mosque and this is near Maghrib, so is this okay?
Fair enough.
Okay. I don't know. I initially want to say some sappy words, but um, I'm demotivated to do it. Maybe Kak Gif or Kak Hem would do it. Yeah. Um, I'll start my speech. Hold on. Let me set my timer. POI is by the way through verbal. That's fine. The gatekeeper. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Why should someone have to choose between the place they were born and the place they call home? In today's world, people move for education, work, or family not because they love Indonesia any less, but because lives take them at that place. Yet, our laws force them to give up parts of their identity just to stay legally recognized. This debate is about giving people the freedom to keep both of their roots and their wings. Legalizing dual citizenship means respecting that identity isn't a single flag, it's a lived experience. What is our model? Three things. First, it looks like we legalize dual citizenship. We recognize EU sanguinis and EU soli. Number two, there's probably a due process that still applies. So things like flocks of immigrants would not be unmanageable, we still test them if they can do Bahasa Indonesia or nationality test or contribution time, for example, like Gonzales, for example, or also criminal record and liability and whatsoever. And thirdly, it could be done through the government bodies. I would be open if the model is unclear. So two arguments then in my speech. First arguments, why then is it the absolute right of the citizens? And the second argument, I would simply prove why then the we will not lose precious human resources in our study houses. So firstly, the premise is that choice is the right that is inalienable and sacred. So it's unfair to put a limitations at the end of the day. So two layers to explain. Firstly is the principles of autonomy. You don't choose to be born in Indonesia. People don't choose to be born, and therefore the state has no moral right to trap them in a single inflexible identity. This is important because democracy is about consent, it's not about coercion. Forcing people to choose one nationality punish them from global mobility and denies them the right to shape their own identity at the end of the day.
Point.
The second layer is more important. Is the reparative duty of Indonesia, right? Indonesia is a post-colonial countries, right? Therefore, a lot of problems arise from that, like centralized opportunities, very dehumanizing competitions, and low wages, for example. And hence, there is an inherent move to move somewhere at the end of the day. But Indonesia are put in this dilemma that Indonesian citizens are put into, that that they love and they are attached to their country. So like feeling, going outside of the countries feels like immoral. It feels like you leaving your roots and whatsoever. That's like also things like, for example, Indonesia's economy, for example, also passport power and many other systematic issues that Indonesian government could not do. So that's why we think that this is a reparative duty of the Indonesian countries to their citizens that they failed um they failed. Before going to my second argument, yes, sure.
If people are leaving, who will repair Indonesia like what you're trying to promote?
Oh, nice. Second argument, why we don't lose pressure human resources. Maybe oppositions will say that this will empower kabur aja dulu movement and will increase the flock of people going out and brain drain. But we argue that brain linkage will instead happen, i.e., people are more connected to their motherland even if they are abroad, and this will actively benefiting Indonesia. The problem now is that many Indonesia who have become citizens elsewhere, e.g. in the US, Australia, or Singapore, lose their legal rights to own property, start business, or invest or like for example invest directly in Indonesia because they're stripped away from their legal rights at the end of the day, right? We think with dual citizenship, they retain the rights to invest without like bureaucratic hurdle or legal risks. These are individuals who already have emotional and cultural and familial ties and often capital and experience from developed economy at the end of the day, right? That's why it will be massively beneficial for Indonesia to retain this individual, even if this individual is going abroad at the end of the day, right? But also it's also opening the chances for foreign people that actually wants to make business in Indonesia far more easier because they don't have to leave their roots, their cultural roots in their initial countries and make Indonesian citizenship. That's why they will open, for example, business opportunities or like investment opportunities that is more large. So I think that economically this will be more beneficial to Indonesia. Comparatively, many second generations Indonesia abroad grow up loving Indonesia but are forced to choose between citizenship. Once they renounce Indonesian citizenship, there is no path back. They are shamed, for example, culturally as the one who are leaving Indonesia, and therefore they become this Indo-hating citizen, for example, that is often demonized their roots, for example, because the culture is shaming at the end of the day, right? We think in ours of the house we will shift the culture and ensure that people can have dual citizenship, and this is like moral, and this is something that you shouldn't be shamed on at the end of the day, right? That's why we think it's very important because without dual citizenship, returning means you giving up your rights they fought for, like health, education, race, or legal protection. So that's why they have to live entirely in their side of the house because urgency pushes them to do so. Therefore, the brain drain becomes so much worse on their side of the house if they want to argue for that. So at the end of the day, what is the weighing of this debate, right? Firstly, on the principle level, I think that this is just like absolute right that ish cannot be like outweighed by like pragmatic benefits that they might try to run, for example, because this is the most proximate thing that we need to do as a government in NFA, right? That's why this as a justification, this is an important justification argument that is already independently winning us the debate, because this is the obligation that the government should have been doing at the end of the day. But secondly, it's a direct flip to maybe their approach about how then Indonesian citizens might go out, for example. So that's why we think that their tactics could have not worked at the end of the day, right? We have proven to you myriads of benefits, like economically, like business opportunities that will happen, for example, for people from foreign that goes in, and also people that is outside that can, make a capital flow back to our countries, for example. That is, for example, with a higher currency power. That is to say, we are able to like ensure that the our for example our what's the word our currency far more stronger, for example, because there is many conversion rates to Indonesian rupiah, for example. And lastly, also they benefit on research and skill transfers, right? I.e., things like, for example, resource people that learns in other countries, for example, can transfer their knowledge into our countries. And fourthly, is also the pride, right? A lot of the countries that already do this, e.g., India, for example, if I'm not mistaken, also, Americans, for example, claim the benefit of like pride. Like they have a CEO, for example, in other countries, for example, that is actively, increasing their soft power and their cultural presence in the global scheme at the end of the day, ensuring that they have a good soft power and like trust into their emerging market. This is why we are so proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
that
you,
speech.
Mr. Gregor.
Okay, thank you for that speech. You're welcome. First speaker here.
Am I audible and visible? Hello, hello. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you're both audible and visible.
Okay. Pronounce he, him, PI preference, just to unmute your mic. Before starting my speech, I just want to say thank you to all my support systems, my girlfriend, Ades, and all of my teammates. Unay Arbeto. Thank you for being here. Okay. So without further ado,
Can
uh,
you try to speak again?
hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, but whatever you said afterwards was a bit laggy on my end. Was it
Okay.
just me?
Good. Hello, hello. How about now? Am I still
Nope, now it's good. Go ahead.
okay? I'll start my speech in three, two, one. I want to note and concede that the incentive to leave the country in the current status quo is already symmetrical on both sides and super overwhelming. This can be looked in the narrative of Kabur Aja Dulu because of the development of politics in Indonesia. This looks like many needs of pro-choice aren't catered, such as KUHP penalizes and prohibits abortion, more incentives for women to go outside of the country, or just the glorification of better life in other countries. All of these overwhelming narratives puts the pressure for people to leave the country. Therefore, the incentives is actually there. The delta in this debate prove which side can cater to these incentives and to stop them from brain drain happening. I think we will win this debate on that very metric. But I think just two responses towards proposition, and I think to just clearly take out and they cannot win this debate from the get go. I think for first one on the principle level, they said that agency is important. But I think firstly, this is not an actor debate. I don't see there's any analysis why this benefit is important in the first place. Second responses is that let's be charitable and just engage to the principle. I think it's even fair to strip away the privileges for those people who actually wants to go out the country and not contribute to the country itself, because we would rather maintain the privileges and give to the privileges who actually wants to stay in the country, contribute to the country, who needs to be protected. That is to say, we want to give only the privilege to work, to property for those who stays in Indonesia because they are the most vulnerable actor, not the one who resides in other country. They don't need all those rights. So I think kick out the principle. But I think secondly about how they said brain drain is not happening. Later on, brain drain about people going out, but about people going in from foreigners. I think this is completely untrue. There is no incentive analysis why people from USA will like to have dual citizenship in Indonesia when they have to pay taxes, for example. But second, I think this is unimportant because foreign people can just invest into a company in Indonesia and just be a beneficial owner. You don't need dual citizenship, so all of the benefits strip away. On matter of brain drain as the contribution from opposition, then to directly engage also towards proposition. I think this is why I want to pinpoint out why is this contribution important? Because having the human resources is important. Is important for Indonesia in the current status quo because there are many structural issues that needs to be fixed, such as education and healthcare. That that shows that it needs all the human resources to improve the quality of all of these sectors, and you can already see in the current status quo, it's already very hard to proliferate and cater to these issues, especially with the growing competition globally. There's exactly incentive of Indonesia clearly exists to maintain the improvement and capacity to improve for Indonesia itself by keeping away the citizens that is promising. Three reasonings then why brain drain will most likely happen on your side and why manifestation of citizenship is very detrimental to stop brain drain. Three analysis on this. Firstly, the manifestation of citizenship, meaning the ability to stay forever in your country. This is very important because as far as people of Indonesia wants to leave the country so bad, even with the glorification of living in USA is so much better social services and whatnot. But I think the analysis is that their family is still here. Their memories contains in Indonesia mostly. This makes people hard to go outside of the country, to not be worried about their family being sick when they are so far away, to not be worried that they are going to be sick and their family cannot take care of them. All of these things are very important to them to make them deterred from thinking about actually leaving the country. That is to say, on our side of the house, when we don't legalize dual citizenship, people of Indonesia who actually wants to leave the country have to go to apply for a visa, and it's just for a limited amount of time. Meaning, what happened is that uh, there is going to be a detrimental amount of time only to be together, probably 30 days, meaning you have to leave your family leave your family all over. This is very important analysis because this is the manifestation of citizenship that is very exclusive. If you don't have dual citizenship, you don't need to worry and people have no incentive to get out. But when people have dual citizenship, they have no worries of going out of the country because they can still go back. Therefore, brain drain happens because they don't have the deterrence to stay in the country. Second thing I want to talk about is the ability to own assets and property. The manifestation of citizenship in Indonesia is the ability to own assets and property. This is very important because when you think about you want to take the apply for citizenship of USA, meaning on our side, you have to lose your citizenship of Indonesia. The manifestation of that is that when you want to leave, you are going to be forced. It's going to be a reset button, and there's no safety net whatsoever for these people on our side. Meaning they're going to be the incentive to stay in Indonesia. Exactly, people want to say because they are scared of selling all of their assets and failing in the future in USA. Exactly, people want to say because they are scared of selling all of their assets and failing in the future in USA, a very competitive world. And
When
thirdly, the manifestation is the ability of work. With the citizenship, you can work without visa in Indonesia. The ability to work is very important just generally because it is the only way to get capital and to stay survive in a competitive world. With dual citizenship, you are going to provide a safety net for them because if you provide dual citizenship for people and you want to leave the country, they will think that the risk is minimized. They can go outside to
846?
USA. They can go outside to USA. No, thank you. They can go outside to USA and then think that in 5 years, if I fail, I can go back to my country. The deterrence exists because why? When you're stripped away from the ability to work in Indonesia, you are not thinking that you're going to risk all your life to try to work in USA and apply for citizenship there. Exactly, you will stay in Indonesia. All this analysis is very important because it is only the manifestation of citizenship that people wants to stay in Indonesia, and then your side doesn't have that because people are just so free and they have always safety net to just go outside of the country and try their risk. This is the manifestation are two things. Firstly, because of the lack of improvement, you are going to lose the human resources to brain drain. What happens is that you are going to have you are going to have worse quality in your study house because the domain of gaining another citizenship will rise because you have dual citizenship. You don't have to worry about not going to be able to go back to Indonesia as a person. Competition will not exist on our side because everyone will probably go outside, especially the one who will probably access this as the one who can access good education, which is the promising human resources. You're going to lose these people. The second impact is you're going to stagnation loss in quality or loss in quality because all of the people are going to leave, meaning the social services is going to be worse on your side. Healthcare, there's not going to be good doctors on your side. And second, education will not be improved in our side. This affects to the ground to the people on the ground. Exactly, we are very proud to be UNER.
Thank you for that speech. We welcome second government. Here.
Check. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, but we cannot see you yet.
Okay. Wait a second. Wait a second. Am I? Wait. The camera is a little bit. Sorry. It's okay.
It's fine. Take your time.
Okay. Wait a second, please. I think my laptop's a little bit overloaded. All right. Am I visible right now?
Yes, visible and audible. Go ahead.
Uh, for for PI, please just unmute yourself. Just I guess just short shout outs to Universitas Brawijaya debating communities. I love everyone. Right. Starting my speech. Oh wait. Starting my speech in three, two, one. The government binds you to a law you were never involved nor consented to make, and force you to bind you into a country that you were never even choose to give birth, and then you are forced to face the structural problem that also created by state government, like how we are facing domestic job crisis, we are facing a really bad regime, we are facing a all high time discriminations, and even job crisis due to AI racings and all of that. I think consent is a very important metrics in this debate because this is exactly a this house believes that legalized motion, which means two things. Number one, it is very important to talk about the justification of legalization because the principle of law and legality is something that we should opt into, and I don't think opposition actually proved why then brain drain is something that deters the legalization of dual citizenship. Even if we say there is an active harm due to this policy, we will prove to you why this is something that is actually not true, and why in their set of the house, the active harm of limiting the choice in and of itself, even if all the practical benefits are going to be like symmetric or like compromised in their set of the house, it's going to be the most important thing in this debate. But also, second of all, I think also the visibility of Indonesian people contributing to the state, because if opposition want to say that there are deterrents that exist in our deterrents that exist in their set of the house that actually wanting them to not want makes people not going outside of the country. I think this deterrence is exactly also something that make people who want to do brain drain or even to do kabur aja dulu trend still contributes to the country. So I'm just gonna enlarge on the scope of the actors because I'm going to identify first who will use dual citizenships. I think one, Indonesian immigrants to other countries. Second, the expatriates going to Indonesia. And third, I want to introduce a new actor that is exiled members of marginalized communities with Indonesia in the past. But before I'm moving on to my issues, I want to tackle preempt a certain a potential argument about nationalism, because I think that even if Indonesians are going to go to brain drain, for example, they will still have sense of nationalism because one, we are exposed by civil education PKN for 12 years. Number two, I think that Bhinneka Tunggal Ika is very effective in making Indonesia feel special as a country that constitutionally enable multiculturality and ethnic identities. Third of all, sense of belonging, like what opposition say, and for the ability to empathize to Indonesian achievement, like winning a match in World Cup elimination or whatever is that. But before I'm moving on to my extension, though, I'm just going to respond talking about the brain drain. Sure, brain drain exists and it is becoming an issue, and opposition have conceded this is something that will be symmetric. However, regardless of the deterrence that they provide in their side of the house, this trend will still persist anyways for four reasons. Number one, the status quo has so much accessibility and information for both working and studying scholarship with so many choices of country all over the world to go. More importantly, I think the second thing is that in either case, we still have the same regime we are preaching kabur aja dulu. That's because we want to escape the government in itself, and maybe we want to return in the future. I think that it's better to have a safety net and options to actually going back in the future as well. Third of all, there's also still domestic job crisis in which the president's trust and promise is not actually delivered, and we are predicted to have a democratic boom in the 20, in 2330 and 2045, in which we will have so many productive age that will be overloading the Indonesian job market. But also lastly, exactly because you feel like you still have safety net in Indonesia, in government side of the house, you're going to be incentivize people and gain more capitals. But even if at the worst scenario that brain drain does happen, I think that legal migration is not a crime if it is going to be legalized anyway. But I will flip this also, that in our side of the house there will be a bigger incentive to contribute because you're conscious about the option that you always have the safety net of your homeland, and you want to take care of a place you are growing in or a place your future investment. That's why you will still nurture your homeland through taxes and other stuff. I have three incentive why you will still care about Indonesia even if you are outside. One, exactly because your loved ones being here, you still want to go back to your family after you gain more capitals and secure your family's investment in future in Indonesia. Second of
Point.
all, because you have sense of belonging, of motherland culture, the simple thing like your childhood dish. And lastly, most people want to spend their retirement in their homeland, for example. And you will still contribute to Indonesia even if you are retiring in Indonesia in your old age, because you're still consuming and buying goods, which also still contribute to the economic cycle. And that's why I think that even if brain drain does happen, first of all, legalization is the most important parameter here. But second of all, we will flip this by saying that there's that going to happen regardless. But the most important thing, if that does happen, why people are still going to be back and why they have the bigger incentives to contribute because they have the safety net. Going to my extension about minorities. The case of minorities that fled due to past violence, like the 1998 chaos or earlier communism crackdown. Probably you have watched documentary Exile, a documentary of people exiled to other countries. They were isolated to European countries and unable to go back, as in the past they were stripped off from their citizenship and they must get new citizenship in their new countries. And then currently they cannot receive Indonesian citizenship back because they are also desperately want to be part of Indonesia again, and they cannot abandon the life they have built in another country even if they want to back to Indonesia. Sure, they can visit Indonesia, but it will never be the same. They will not be able to contribute directly in Indonesia. They are going to be treated as foreigner in their own homeland. And most importantly, there is no way government can compensate them in any form at all in opposition side of the house. Therefore, they are the vulnerable actor in this debate, and the reparatory case is important because the main take of this argument is also that this compensation does not and doesn't have any production of active harm at all, because we are giving them a safety and compensation about the state violence that were given in the past. But also, just briefly, talking about mobility and productivity, I think that mobility and productivity will be much better in our side of the house because all our problem lately is due to bureaucracy that was also caused by the single citizenship. For example, a lot of expat investors are going to Vietnam because they can. The bureaucracy is much easier there. That means in 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 our side of the house, as long as you are an Indonesian citizen, you will still pay taxes and included as Indonesian productive citizen to measure the gross national income, which is utilized as a measurement of economic strength anyway. And most Indonesian expats do have higher income if converted to rupiah, which means we think that even the mobility and productivity is still better in our side of the house. We're proud to propose.
All right, thank you so much for that speech. We welcome second up here.
Hi. Hoping I'm audible and visible for that. This is probably the last classic I'll ever participate in before I graduate. So I'm very proud of my two for being an amazing support system. Yeah, blessed to have him in my life. What else? The biggest problem in proposition is that they've never explained why all the knowledge and glory that you gain abroad will directly transfer into Indonesia. All of their case talks about proximate benefit. Therefore, with their own characterization, they concede that you will choose to live and contribute to a better country than to Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
I think the proposition cannot run away by saying that they will miss their family in Indonesia. I'm going to flip this. The incentive is to not to give back to your family in Indonesia, but to bring your whole family abroad because they realize that USA is much better, for example. Therefore, 4 points of framing to further strengthen UNER's win. First, shaming people will happen irrespective of this motion happening or not. But this happens in your side when you put less contributions to Indonesia having a dual citizenship, right? But secondly, when you live in Indonesia, you're also given protection and privileges by the government. It's not perfect, we will concede. But this doesn't mean that you can ask for a benefit from Indonesia while not contributing to Indonesia and getting benefit from another country with a much better GDP and a bigger currency than rupiah. But thirdly, this debate is a value judgment motion, right? Therefore, it should revolve around why it's good or bad to Indonesia or not, irrespective, not about you having like personal benefit, like what the whole case of PM basically. But fourthly, we concede that maybe in opposition there are people who will be rich enough to go out, but in opposition you don't send the message at least, right, by legalizing dual citizenship. People living the country in huge quota happens in proposition because you legalize it even further, making them even more incentivized, which is the whole case of Rizadi. The purpose of this framing is to explain two things. First, this redirect the debate and make you realize that opposition answers the burden of the motion. But secondly, the harm is flipped and happens exactly in proposition under their own characterization. 3 points of argumentations. First, nationalism and unity, and I think this clash with Brawijay's argumentation. Secondly, is about brain drain. Thirdly, is about economy and why that's going to be even worse for Indonesia. The first thing I want to argue on is about nationalism, right? What we want to argue is under 2 points of premises. First, having dual citizenship means internal conflict between two countries that you're living in. Why? Because the prereq of having attachment to your country of nationalism is when you only live or surrounded by a fellow Indonesians as well. It's when you live inside it, right? When you have another surroundings, which is dual citizenship, Indonesia become less proximate and less important to you. But secondly, you have first incentive to actively participate because why would you participate in a place that you don't even live in the very first place, right? The impact are 3 points of argumentations. People care less about issues inside our country.
Point.
Weird policies, no check and balances at all. Secondly, people care less about issues about vulnerable people, right? For example, equality in Java and non-Java are campaigned by those who actually care about your country. But thirdly, there is no reward to fight, just move because we have dual citizenship right now. I want to post it that dual citizenship most likely can only be done by wealthy or very, very lucky individual who is marrying or like dating Caucasian, right? So it's not accessible at all in proposition. This is very important because firstly, unification is the prerequisite to solve ongoing problems in Indonesia, protesting, demonstration.
Yeah.
Therefore, in proposition, secondly, you have no check and balances towards the government because you have less proximity, you have less attachment, you care less about everything that's happening in your country. But thirdly, vulnerable people will be even more vulnerable because there is no incentive from privileged ones to help. And I want to note that in proposition, there is no fear that everyone can go abroad or everyone can have dual citizenship in the very first place. Therefore, only some very small community can do that. Not everyone can apply for a $650 US citizenship. Second issue is about brain drain, right? What we want to argue on, and the whole case of all, is that there are enough incentive to go abroad already. Because I think both teams in this debate realize that the country isn't really perfect. But the impact of you giving legalization to for dual citizenship are this. Indonesia should be benefited from the 2045 Golden Age agenda because Indonesia has a huge birth rate, which translates into a lot of young people on productive age happening. Therefore, you are going to have a lot of economic benefit. Now they will contribute to another country that gives them a bigger salary. You have no development to Indonesia. You have no innovation, no new products in huge companies, or no representative in the government sector that could possibly be a great chain breaker to us that could finally free us from the bad incumbent. What is important? First, assuming in both sides of the house you can go abroad, the delta is this, right? In prop, you just need to go without any restriction at all. In up, you cannot because you have to reset your status from the zero again. You have to sell a lot of your assets. You have to sacrifice for a lot of things. Therefore, the incentive to not go abroad exists in opposition, especially because the legalization does not happen at all, right?
Yeah.
But
Point.
secondly, this does not develop Indonesia at all. What you're going to do is you're going to hinder Indonesia's progress, be it in education and technology. And I don't think I don't think Pip has explained to you the mechanism of why people are so attached to Indonesia, they're going to bring everything back. Look at ISMA, look at LPDP. No one from there actually wants to go back. We've gained a lot of losses from actually sending people abroad because they refuse to go back to your country. Those example already gives you a huge reflection about how all out of everything that people are doing right now for the sake of transfer of knowledge, the transfer has never happened. Before I go on, speak
Sorry. Yeah.
three, two,
So you do know
issue three is
that.
about economy, right? What do we want to argue? 2 points. First, dual citizens might exploit tax loopholes between countries. For example, you're working abroad, getting a property in the place that they live in, but then you avoid tax in Indonesia, even though when they go to Indonesia, they also enjoy the public facilities that provided by the government, right? But secondly, you're not going to pay local taxes, even though you work abroad, right? Which means you have bigger salary due to currency, probably because you're going to like have dual citizenship in a much better place. Therefore, you're going to put less contribution for Indonesia's wealth. The impact are three folds of argumentation. First of all, is about housing crisis, because people who do dual citizenship can buy any property and commercialize them because currency gets them even more money. For example, if I work in like I don't know US and then I have like dollar wages, I can really just buy like a house in Indonesia and use it to rent and whatnot and still gain money from it. Even if I have to do pay taxes and everything is much cheaper. It doesn't become a significant like reduction of wage or of my cash, right? Therefore, poor people who cannot have dual citizenship are far less disadvantaged because they cannot access proper housing. Secondly, paying less than what people without dual citizenship is paying, but you're not contributing enough and equally, right? Because everything that you are getting right now should also be should also reflects your contribution to Indonesia. For the fact that you are also contributing to someone anything to another place and not actually paying like a lot of taxes, I think that's not a fair reason for you to enjoy like public facilities and whatnot. But thirdly, countries have less income, which is detrimental, right? Because tax is 80% of Indonesia's APBN. Therefore, you have less cash to do more innovation or public infrastructure development and whatnot. This is important because of two reasons. First, burden should be shared by everyone and equally. Therefore, this is unfair to people who's not a dual citizen because they have been poor, they've been marginalized for so far. But legalizing this, giving the chance for people who should have helped them in the very first place to run away, means you delete a significant help amount for those who actually needs the help in the very first place. But secondly, country is unable to do further development, not only because you have less tax, less cash, less money, but also because there is no one in a corporation that is part of your country who's actually going to work for you. Therefore, you have no one to ask for new ideas for, to ask young generations for, to actually put good policies in the government for, right? Therefore, that's why on a huge scale, on the micro level, you have less nationalism, you have less incentive to be proximate with your country because you're going to be much invested to another country. But secondly, also on spectrum of Indonesia, you're also going to lose a lot of very young, like talented individual micro macro win.
Thank you for that speech. We welcome third go. Here.
Hi. Am I audible and visible?
Um, audible, yes.
Visible?
Yes.
Thank you for the confirmation. Um, quick shout out because apparently my teammates are quite too sigma to do this, and they think this is corny. I don't care. This is my first and only ALSA UE anyway, as Brawijayans. So might as well. I would like to thanks everyone that is intertwined in Brawijaya English Debating Society, and also Bengkulu debating community. There are apparently quite some of them watching right now. Let's hope for a better preparations, and of course, my family, Nadira and Joey. Yeah, I think that's all. Yeah, obviously, my teammates that carry my ass, carry my presence, Herman Ferza. So yeah, POI preference through Fairball. Um, I will be taking up to 2 POI. I will be asking, and I wouldn't chop your POI midway. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2. What opposition want is the abolishing of spark of hope. Hence, every incentive to actually contribute, whether it is from the diaspora or from the people from the within, will perish. because people will think that they are not being given opportunity in this post-colonialistic country, that they are being oppressed more and more, that every time they want an opportunity, they are seen as traitor, betrayal to the country, demonized every time. That's what they want. Because I want to kick out every external argument that they have with a simple thing. When they say that, oh, it's no beneficial of doing dual citizenships. But then they say that, oh, people wouldn't want this because you will be paying double the tax. So it's kind of kill their own arguments on the externalities because they kind of mismatch with what they believe. The thing is, if these people are still going somewhere and then they're still part of our citizenship, they do pay tax, that's a huge income. One. Secondly, I want to kick out on the externalities upon their idea that brain drain. I think this is the winning argument on us, but also the losing point on opposition, because opposition simply say that brain drain is bad. They do agree on that, but no mechanization whatsoever. Why then they're demonizing and trying to keep in people from liberation in their side of the house will solve this issue. But secondly, they admit that brain drain is bad. So you kind of need to do something and not just trap people around, because oppress people with frustrated mindset resulted into so many bad things, including illegal things that they are going out to Myanmar probably or Cambodia. So that's going to happen on them. And I kind of feel sad when when LO told you that these people are not matter because they are this is not an agency or actor motion, which they simply kick out the most vulnerable actor in the third party motion like this. They should lose in the very first place. I think that's quite sufficient to kick on the externalities of their missing of mechanizations of process argument. I will be moving on to some rebuttals before my comparisons. So first then, upon the idea of why then people would want to have a foreigner dual citizenships, or people from another country would want to invest in here. Notice Hema's arguments are not being responded well by DLO by saying that, oh no, people wouldn't want anyway. Very dismissive. And doing some dismissive burden push as well. We think bureaucracy is still hella complex that going to happen in here. That's why people are choosing to go to Vietnam. That's why Bill Gates are choosing to create the office in Singapore, because exactly bureaucracy is so complex because the nationalisms that are already rooted make you feel like asing or like foreigner is someone that you need to hate based on inherent consent. This is the exact thing why we will hate on this kind of people, but we are embracing Bule Jowo, or we embracing Kim Heo. I don't really know that one Suraboyoan Korean thing, Korean people. So I do believe that the idea of notions of internalization will result into certain contribution. True, because bureaucracy is gonna be way easier, people will still invest. Not to mention that they do concede this. They say that about housing crisis. Tata said that. The problem with that is you are backlashing your own argument and your own speakers on the bench when they say that no, people wouldn't want to invest, but yada yada, housing crisis. So pick a stance. But because we do believe that it will manifest into the idea that yes, some people will do it exactly because of the currency imbalance, but it's still better because it's giving more opportunities. Point. Up.
If you say that people are going to Vietnam or countries that is less prominent than Indonesia anyway, so what is the benefit to Indonesia?
No, it's not benefit to Indonesia exactly because no dual citizenship. Then it's very hard for you to invest, even with the method that LO told you, because you will still be seen as aseng. That is exactly why you will be getting this bule price, for example. Comparatively, when you are part of Indonesian citizens, you pay the taxes, you get the benefit of being Indonesian. That's why they want to do it, and a lot of them want to do it. It's symmetrical already happening in Bali, for example, but less transparency. With this documented mechanisms that Firza been telling you, you are getting those transparency. It goes to the country benefit. So yeah, letter contributions on I think that's quite enough. Let's just do the comparisons then. Actually, there are 5 things that we talk about in this debate, 3 of those being completely dismissive by opposition. I'm still open for POI. One, about the right of the citizens. We say that it is within the government obligation to uphold these democratic obligations to constituent, which are these people, the people that arbitrarily born in this post-colonial country and having a centralized competition. So that is exactly why debater from Bengkulu like me took 12 years for first classic in the very first place. Why? Because it's Very, very hard. So the incentive to do check and balance in the very first place that they've been questioning wouldn't be there. Why? Because you are not feeling that you are being given an opportunity. This is the easiest way that Indonesia should do to incentivize these people, to manipulate them into thinking that the country does listen to you, the country does compensate for the repression kind of thing that Firza been telling and blubbering about, right? This is exactly why this is very exclusive to us. Their only response to this is that no, people doesn't feel that way. No obligation. They are not contributing. How? How are they going to contribute when you are already decapitating their ability to contribute? Because not everyone need to contribute to become blue collar worker, for example. You need the job that could only be afforded when you go somewhere else because this country is not yet advanced in that kind of thing. I'm still open for POI. But secondly, on the loss of on the minimizing brain drain, they do agree brain drain is bad. They never mechanize how immediately and magically in their side of the house, brain drain will somehow magically disappear. We think that whenever you let people to choose to live and force, they will be framed as betrayal, like LO been telling you. They will be demonized. They will have a reciprocal hatred. So they're likely to contribute wouldn't be there, despite they have the nationality, PKN, and civic kind of thing that Hema been telling you, because it relies on two things. One, personal incentive, their love and nationalisms. They still talks about Indonesia, shows that they still care. But secondly, exclusive on us, the ability to contribute contingent on citizenship, because it's harder for outsider to contribute. This is why people Indonesian government criminalizing Greenpeace or Jakarta Indo-feminist founders that come from Australia. Well, comparatively, when they are actually Indonesian, it's harder to do that. They will contribute even more, harder to negate. But thirdly, utility of diaspora. The idea of currency transfer and transfer knowledge is exclusive on us. Op contribution is none on this because they had diaspora anyway. That is appearing on the screen anyway. But fourthly, on the opportunity through business creation, pick a stance. You do say that people will invest and create housing crisis, or you do say that people will not do it. So because of that, I think we kind of buy the argument. Lastly, illegal alternative access on you. This is still the obligations of the government to ensure that the people are safe. This is why the government still picking them up from Myanmar. Too many things need to be done. Too many money need to be spent. We think as long as these people pay taxes and still do brain drain, just like in your side, it's still better for those reasons. Propose.
All right, thank you for that speech. We call third op here.
Check, am I audible?
Yes. But you're not visible.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, before starting my debate, I would like to say thank you to Kak Tata and Rizadi and Arilin, Bintang, Kausen, yeah, and anyone else. So yeah, any pronouns? If I just unmute and I'll take one though. So yeah, I'll start my speech in the structure of PPKN by Kak Hema anyways. Because the thing that makes me care about my countries is not necessarily on PPKN, but it is about my family staying there. It is about the culture instead. So the manifestation here is that about the only citizenship in Indonesia. Therefore that this is a tangible impact for the people itself. This is the reason why people stay in Indonesia anyways, right? So PPKN anyways do not affect your nationalisms. Cannot buy this anyways. So three things that is important in this debate before going on to my part. Firstly, this debate is on third POV anyways. I don't think that the individual's concern is the main purpose in this debate. Sure, the problem is valid. I can admit that their principle is kind of good anyways, but it is very actor motion. But we will explain anyways at the end of the day. Why then this also it harms individuals living inside Indonesia. Therefore, anything that they bring is an exclusive anyways. Second, on both sides of the house, the incentive to leave Indonesia is pretty clear. What does it looks like? Kabur aja dulu. So the thing that you have to credit judge is that who's
cases as are less harmful for the future Indonesia, for the future Indonesian anyways. Thirdly, in illegal alternative from Kak Givari, you do not credit that because that is a very new material that is not even being made by Firs and Kak Hema anyways. Two questions here. Firstly on leverage, second on a brain drain. Firstly on the leverage then. So on proposition side, you have to prove two things. A, why then the leverage given by the dual citizenship can still incentivize people to contribute. Second, why then the right of dual citizenship is very urgent for the Indonesian anyways. So the impact that we tell you is on few things. A, Indonesia is only seen as an option to invest or even dana darurat, like for example, saving asset without you contributing a lot to Indonesia. This harms Indonesians more because you get less taxes, for example, because the regulation of the taxes is very loose, anyways. Therefore that you can leave your responsibility as the Indonesian citizens. We don't want that. Secondly, on social service or even public services that is enjoyed by Indonesians, this also manifests on the people on the ground, on people that cannot even leave Indonesia easily as what the privileged people do anyways, right? On your side of the house, the building of the social services and whatnot will have it worse anyways because you lose the capacity to improve already from the very first place. But if opposition want to say, oh, they can still contribute in tax or whatever it is, therefore they can also learn outside and what is that knowledge happens and so on and so forth. On few responses then. A, they still have to prove on the process of the transfer on the process of the transfer knowledge. What is the proof then? The privileged people have less incentive to stay and contribute in a very huge and a very huge concept because they have a less sense of belongings because they do not relate to underprivileged people also for example. But even if you want to say, oh, a few people want to contribute, like for example the minister, etc., we tell you that it is not enough because the people that live Indonesia will be more comparing to the people that who want to contribute effectively. Therefore that we tell you that the prerequisite for Indonesia to be fixed, Indonesia to be improved, is that the human resources, therefore the human resources, the amount of human in Indonesia is very important anyways. The influence of the diaspora on your side of the house is worse. Even if this is a new material from Kak Givari, let's just respond lah. You promote the people to stay. You promote the people to stay abroad, comparing to contribute in Indonesia. Because the thing that you will advocate is that on other countries you have a better public services. You have more money anyways. The food is more delicious, for example. Therefore, the influences on the diaspora is not about how to contribute to Indonesia anyways. I don't get the benefit from opposition. So comparing
That one?
on our side, which there is no dual citizenship later on two things. A is on check and balance. Like exactly the things that makes you stay is that the family that is still in Indonesia, the culture, or even the administration of living Indonesia, for example, or even you have to gamble when you leave Indonesian citizenship. You lose that kind of echo chamber, and you have to survive outside. That makes you think twice. Should I leave Indonesia or not? Can I survive outside or not? Therefore, that the check and balance will exist on our side of the house. Therefore, on our side of the house, even if you want to leave, means that you're already that capable from the very first place. Secondly, the unlikeliness to send the message. So in so far opposition, the message on kabur aja dulu, for example, means that it gives the awareness on how Indonesians legal, for example, is kind of ambiguous. Therefore, that you have to pay attention for it. Anyways, so how do you weigh this judge on a few things? A, the benefit is in exclusive because the leverage means that there is less incentive for you to participate. Second, the only resources you hold will lose on few things. A, the asset is owned by people happily live in other countries. Second, you lost the human resources because be realistic. Let's be realistic. People love other countries. Lastly, on the social services and funds. The thing is that those kind of things will not be improved. Will less likely be improved anyways, right? Lastly, on the brain drain, what does the brain drain looks like. I think it includes a message on why you should leave, largely because countries do not embrace you. Right? So what happened to in dual citizens are a few things. A, on the idealistic message, because on dual citizens they will tell you that, oh, you still can have Indonesian citizenship anyways, therefore that you, yeah, therefore that you can leave your country anyways without having to deal with the Indonesian administration at the end of the day. Second, you do not have someone who stays, like for example, underprivileged people who are unlikely to to leave the countries. Demonstration or even something that to fix the countries will be the incentivized, because the thing that they will incentivize is to leave the countries because you have that opportunities already. So the question that you have to is that why did the incentive to go back to Indonesia will exist while they already have a better income? Exactly why proposition lose. On weighing on opposition is that three things. A, on the proximity, you still have something to stay. Lastly, is that take the benefit and transfer knowledge exactly on us. At least you got education in Indonesia proud.
All right, thank you so much for that speech. To close the case from Up, we welcome Up reply. Here. Up reply.
Yep. Here. Sorry. Apa? Main timer tadi. Anyway, this is how UNER conducts proposition. First, this is not an individual debate. Their whole case is about giving, and when you give that have been significantly impacted by the government policy in Indonesia. That's good. The problem is this debate should be directed why this is great for Indonesia and how you could fix all of these issues that proposition has posed to you, not benefits to Indonesians necessarily, right? But secondly, proposition has never engaged to ongoing issues in Indonesia and how that could be solved by you giving dual citizenship. I think that therefore their own harm manifests without any further salvation. Thirdly, proposition lacks process analysis and visible impact. Fourthly, the individual incentive is lackluster because assuming that both sides are going to pay tax, for example, the problem is you're paying much less tax to Indonesia. This does not contribute to your GDP, like what Hema told you. That's a lie at all. This literally goes against it, like every single analysis that opposition has told to you, right? The point of this like start of my reply speech is to explain that their own harm could not be solved by their own mechanism, and all of our impact still stands true, and our analysis about how individuals are less incentivized to contribute to your country stands. Because the period of you actually wanting to care is when something is proximate, is when you live inside it. Therefore, you should not let them go outside of the country and have dual citizenship. I want to ask proposition three things. First, will people actually do dual citizenship or not? Secondly, how do you contribute to people who cannot go for dual citizenship? Thirdly, who will take parts in Indonesia's further development and growth? At best, if these questions are answered, it was in Gifari's speech, which is obviously so damn late lah. Because notice how Una explained to you three things, right? First, you prevent how people from going out, and this is exclusive because people in proposition can just flee at once. And under our side of the house, with the existing check and balances of you thinking about like selling your assets and having to yeah, it's expensive and whatnot. Therefore, you're not going to be incentivized to do so. Doing legalization means you are going to send a message to this is okay and you should go do it in a huge magnitude. But secondly, you have no incentive to give back. The message that you're going to send is not about contributing back to Indonesia, but to like literally move every single person that is proximate to you to go abroad because you care and love about them. Is to put your daughter into a school in Switzerland and whatnot. Thirdly, you are going to exploit Indonesia due to the fact that you have a bigger wage and because you have a bigger capability when you're going to go abroad and live in a much better place, right? But even if all of my harms manifest, even if you don't buy all of my cases via judges, first, the principle of nationalism is exclusive with not legalizing dual citizenship. Therefore, irrespective of this motion happening or not, the only way that you can only get people to unite together, have each other, have those who are poor and not privileged is for them to stay inside the country, is to make sure that they are proximate to these issues in the very first place, right? Doing dual citizenship takes them away from all the issues that should be cared about, and we need their participation to solve all of this, right? But secondly, vulnerable actor that will be impacted exists, and proposition has never explained why everyone can have dual citizenship in the very first place, right? Because the prereq of their benefit is if everyone could go abroad and have dual citizenship, yes, if the transfer of knowledge. That means that if people cannot do it, then you're not going to have any benefit at all in proposition, right? They have to somehow explain to us why everyone can will go abroad and actually do the transfer of knowledge. Because if they're going to say things like, oh yeah, maybe some can, maybe some cannot, therefore all of their benefit like does not manifest at all. But thirdly, this proposition has yet to explain why their harm will be solved by dual citizenship. We explain why one citizenship is the prereq of for important check and balances towards the government, which is the ongoing issue, and this is exclusive only is insofar that you don't actually let them go out at all. But fourthly, principle of equal benefit to everyone can only happen insofar people stay in the very first place, right? If you're going to go out and not going to pay equal taxes, but then you're also going to feel the same enjoyment and the same benefit as those who actually pay full taxes and does not have any dual citizenship at all, we call that unjustified, ladies and gentlemen. And notice that all of this principle will stand irrespective of their benefit and harm manifesting or not. Therefore, what we promote in UNER is the fact that you as an individual needs to be proximate with your country, with Indonesia. In so far, they still promote the idea of you legalizing this and you having the opportunity to go away and have a better life and whatnot, all for harms manifest. The fact that you're not going to have those who needs your help, even though you are the privileged one, you're not going to put check and balances, no demonstration, no protesting happening. People needs to exist in quota. Therefore, taking that quota away by dual citizenship is the start of crushing and chaos in Indonesia. Proud to win.
Thank you for that speech. To close the whole debate, we welcome God reply. Here.
Am I visible and audible? Wait,
Yes.
yeah, my like. All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Just want to clarify first thing that I didn't lie at all. I didn't say GDP. I say GNI, gross national income. GDP is a gross income that is counted within the domestic of land in Indonesia. GNI is regardless of where you are located to. As long as you're Indonesian citizenship, you are contributing to the economic metrics. That's different. I'm not lying. That's it. So second of all, I want to talk about what is exactly this debate because opposition is really desperate in shifting this debate. It's about third actor perspective, therefore the principle doesn't apply. No, two things. One, sure, this is a third actor debate, but the biggest idea of this debate is about legalization, which means you have to ensure us and talk about us what is exactly the metrics of legalization. Why then, under any circumstances, like regardless of this, just in a vacuum world, why dual citizenship is principally not allowed by a country. I think that's the biggest thing that you have to explain. Second of all, notice opposition burden. The first speaker literally said that they want to stop brain drain. The question is, how? How do you protect the vulnerable people who cannot go outside, for example? We have explained to you that regardless of anything, you will still be harmful if you stay in Indonesia because, for example, the domestic crisis of job, the demographic boom, the regime that literally do injustice to you. That means as long as opposition doesn't have any mechanization, how vulnerable people are going to be protected under their side of the house, they can of vulnerable people are going to be harmed in government because in their side of the house, this harm stays symmetrics or not symmetric actually. It's actually going to be much worse because at the very least in government, you will have options. And why this option is important and accessible, we've explained to you. But just let's just go furthermore into the clashes. I think that we have three clashes here. The first is about justifying legalization. Second, about brain drain, economic stuff. The third is about the vulnerable. The first thing about justification, government explained to you the metrics of justifying legalization on two layers. The first is about consent and why it is a democratic obligation to protect consent. You cannot just outframe this as something that is not a third or this is a third actor debate that's for it is not important because it's individual. Why it is individual? I don't care. Because in the guidelines, it's just check IFATs or UADC guidelines. The this house believes that motion Particularly, this house believes that should is also a proposal motion, which means justification should be implied into this debate, which means the justification of consent and reparatory principle, as long as it doesn't get responded by opposition side of the house, it stays stands, and it is something that you should contribute on, and we absolutely win on legal on justification. The second is about brain drain. Opposition say that there will be a deterrent to still live in Indonesia, and people will avoid tax if you are going to another country. I want to ask, why then people will suddenly just everyone will just avoid tax? Because we have said to you there are legal process. I think this is just a very assumptive analysis that is trying to impose a harm in which I don't think the harm is also successfully managed, because we have explained to you that obligation of tax exists, and I don't think why suddenly the country will just neglect or abandon and not monitoring any kind of thing. I think we have explained this also, in which I don't get any response why then tax avoidance will still be exist anyway. So the fertility, the comparative is this. I don't get why in opposition side of the house economic improvement still exists due to the status quo that is currently worsening right now. So I think that even the brain drain still symmetrically happen anyway due to the incentives that exist for the people. So that means the harm still exists in their side of the house. But also more importantly, the last clash, the vulnerable people. Our analysis about exiles are never touched. This is very important because this is also a reparatory principle, and they have the right to actually get those dual citizenship to eventually go back. And we think that in the end, opposition fails to protect their own vulnerable. Yeah, propose. Sorry.
All right. Thank you so much for that speech, and thank you everyone for a wonderful, wonderful debate and a hopefully wonderful competition for everyone. Yeah, on behalf of CAP, I think this would be the last from us.
Recording stopped.
Um, Thank you for joining the competition, and thank you so much for the wonderful